He's a bigger monster than anybody I've heard or read about. Like I say, shocking doesn't even begin to cover it.
But before going into details, we invite you, our dear viewers, to press the like button and the subscribe button and activate the bell feature to be the first to receive everything new, strange, and realistic. Let's continue. It was 1 o'clock in the morning when a person dressed in black attacked a 21-year-old woman while she was sleeping. The woman woke up to blows from her attacker, who tied her up and covered her face with happiness after he harassed her and photographed her naked. He stole several pieces of her underwear and fled. It was all due to the attacker's bizarre sexual rituals, but after more than 80 break-ins, the sick man needed more excitement. So Russell William, a colonel in the Canadian Air Force, raped, tortured, and murdered 2 women for sheer pleasure. The soldier led a double life, being a well-known and respected soldier in the Canadian Army, but also having a lecherous side and criminal instincts. His story shocked public opinion. He has been a pilot for several ministers and even for the Queen of England. One day, David Russell Williams was born on the 7th of March of the year 1963 in England, and soon immigrated with his family to Canada, more specifically to Ontario, where his father worked as a metallurgist in a nuclear research laboratory. The teen excelled in his studies and graduated from the University of Toronto in economics and political science. In the year 1987, he decided to join the Air Force. He attended many training schools. He was a flight instructor during that time. His conduct was exemplary, and he rose to the rank of colonel with an entire wing or unit under his command. He has spent 23 years of exemplary service. He was respected and admired by his superiors as well as his subordinates thanks to his high rank. Williams served as head of the Toronto Air Force Base, one of the most important bases in Canada, and served as a pilot for his country's Prime Minister, Governor General, and even Queen Elizabeth II of England herself. No one ever suspected that behind this attractive appearance of a respectable man, there would be a vile and intimidating personality. After marrying Mary in June of the year 1991, the couple led a very normal life, and in their spare time they played golf, and Russell William enjoyed photography, a hobby that would become an inexhaustible source of pleasure. His criminal career began in September of the year 2007, when the colonel raided the homes of his neighbors in Kuwait and in a small town in Montreal and Toronto to try to wear their women's underwear and reach orgasm in that way. Next to them, the man was sick in every sense of the word. Over the years, this behavior has been a continuous pattern. Bullets would break into houses and steal pieces of women's underwear in the house, then film themselves with them and enjoy themselves. His pathetic behavior led him to steal more than 500 items of underwear of all colors in the course of 82 home breaks, of which only 21 cases were reported. This obsession has led him to burglarize the home of the same woman a few times. What seemed like a sick game turned within a few months into motives for murder. Williams needed more risk and more motivation. Nothing like it. So in September of the year 2009, he broke into the home of a 21-year-old girl while she was asleep and beat the girl, later covering her face. He molested her, took pictures of her naked, and gave her a jaw souvenir. He stole several pieces of underwear at the end of the same month. He did the same. He pounced on a 46-year-old woman. She was sleeping on the couch and he beat her and tied her up. He did not rape her, but he sexually assaulted her. After taking several pictures, the colonel returned home. He lived on the same street. On November 6, 2009, he fired his next victim, Marie Francisco, a 38-year-old military flight attendant serving under him at Trident Air Force Base. He entered the house, hid in her basement, and when she got home, he hit her with a flashlight and knocked her unconscious. He handcuffed and gagged her, dragged her into her bedroom, and dragged her undressed. After taking several pictures of her, he turns on a video camera and begins recording what happens next. He raped her for hours. While the young woman resisted, Marie begged him to leave her alone. But nothing she said made his heart soften. The messenger strangled him to death, cleaned himself up, and went to a meeting. A few days later, the colonel sent a letter of condolence to the Poe girl's mother. 2 months later, the colonel was killed again. It was the 27th of January in the year 2010 when Williams noticed a young woman who was exercising at home. The victim was Jessica, 27 years old. He thought she was a nice girl, so he decided to assault her the next day. He waited for her to fall asleep and repeated the same way he did with Mary. He beat her and blindfolded her in her neighbor of her clothes and pictures, and then raped her for several hours while recording it on a video camera. But Williams felt no pity for her. He hit her on the head, strangled her with a rope, then wrapped her body in a blanket and left her in the garage. He didn't have time to get rid of the corpse. After the crime, Russell went to the airbase where he had several flights scheduled, which he did without any problem. And when he finished, he went home. He spent the whole weekend with his wife. In the early hours of Tuesday, February 2nd, the colonel disposed of Jessica's remains in a wood near Doyle that afternoon. Her family reported her missing. Ontario police launched investigations, and when combing the girl's home and surroundings, they found tire marks and shoe prints on the spot. All entrances to the highway were blocked off, and any car that wanted to access that road was stopped. During the search, Russell was detained, and today he was driving a Nissan Ben Piper with signs very similar to those found near Alwad's house, which prompted the investigators to summon him for questioning on Sunday, February 7th. The colonel appeared in a small room in the Ottawa police station. Despite being given opportunities to contact Williams' lawyer, he was calm in his demeanor, believing it would not get so out of hand. What happened over the next 10 hours was not at all in the colonel's plans. Anyone who left Detective James Smith in the interrogation room was discovering something new linking Russell to the murder. Investigators explained to him that the tire tracks from his car matched those from the back of the victim's home. He added that one of the witnesses saw that car parked, and his description of the car matched that of the Williams car, not to mention that it made him believe that his shoe prints were like fingerprints and unique, and that his fingerprints matched those at the scene of the accident. Russell had no way out. He felt trapped until he said, "I don't know what to say." This was a signal to the interrogator to take the next step. The interrogator told him that they had searched his house and found evidence, and that his wife knew about it. Here, the colonel broke down and began to confess. In the following hours, the colonel saw in a monotonous and inexpressive manner how he entered the homes of his victims and explained in detail the torture and humiliation he had inflicted upon them before killing them. He pointed to the exact location where they would find Jessica's body. His speech was devoid of any kind of emotion. That day, Russell was arrested on 2 counts of first-degree murder, in addition to assault, forcible kidnapping, and sexual assault. For the prosecutor in the case, Burgess was not just a sexual predator, but one of the worst criminals in Canadian history. During the trial, which began in October 2010, Williams was as cold as he had been during the first interrogation, though he pleaded guilty to the fact that the colonel had shown no sympathy for his victims. His words were hollow and cold, as were his manner and actions. The judge sentenced Williams to 2 consecutive terms of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for 25 years. Murders of Marie-France Cuomo and Jessica Lloyd. While reading the verdict, the judge described the accused as a very sad serial killer, and it is fortunate that such crimes are not widespread in Canadian society, as the depth of perversity reached by Williams is unparalleled. In addition to the 2 life sentences, the colonel was sentenced to 20 years imprisonment for the assault of any 2 nationalities and 1 year for each of the 82 robberies he committed. After the ruling, the Canadian forces stripped him of his rank, decorations, and military uniform. in addition to disgracefully exempting him from his military duties. He does not deserve the oath he takes to serve Canadians as officers in the armed forces, Defense Secretary Peter MacKay said at the time. A person who lived as one of the most respected members of the Canadian military ended up in prison as the worst criminal. In the end, dear viewers of Black Oddities, we wish you an enjoyable viewing and invite you to subscribe to the channel and like the video to encourage us to provide everything new, interesting, and realistic. See you in the next video.